Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest podcast from Healthark Insights. In today's podcast, we have Ms. Preetha Vasanji. She's part of the senior management team at Doceree, working at the capacity of President Emerging Markets, and she's also the MD at Doceree. Doceree as a company is a healthcare HCP marketing platform, and I recently read in one of the last 2022 reports that you have reached or touched 1.5 million HCPs. Now that's a great feat. And you have presence in 10 plus markets, including US, Europe, Asia, GCC, and APAC. Ms. Preetha Vasanji has over 2 decades of experience in the healthcare communications and marketing space, where we'll be diving a bit deeper today. Welcome, Ms. Preetha. Thank you for joining us. Can you start with a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Shivang. Thank you for inviting for the Healthark Insights. So yes, I think it's been very interesting to see the developments happening in the digital space. And I primarily come from an advertising background. So I've spent about 2 decades in advertising before I decided to move on to something that's a little more futuristic, which is where my shift to Docker happened, and I've been with Docker almost since inception. I think it's wonderful to see the way the digital landscape is changing, in the 3 years that we've spent, working with the big pharma, working with health sciences industry. It's very interesting to see the nuances in the digital landscape evolving over a period of time. And I'm happy to share more as we move ahead in our conversation.
Yeah, and that is my first question. Like, how has the industry evolved over a period of time?
Yeah, I think Shivang, it's interesting because I think this industry, or rather any industry, change is the only constant, right? So
Hmm.
evolution has always been a part and parcel of how things have moved, and to that extent, pharma and life sciences industry is also not an exception. Yeah, from a marketing perspective, things have changed quite a bit to what it is today as compared to perhaps maybe even a decade ago. Yeah. But there's one very key aspect of this industry, I think, that's been a constant. Yeah. Is the fact that it's perhaps the only industry which is largely or rooted in a one-on-one engagement model with the healthcare professional or
Hmm.
with the target customer, I would say. Yeah, there's no industry, whether it is automobile, it is banking, or it is any other industry that you look at. It is got a human connect, yeah, which essentially is your medical rep who goes and meets the doctors, at a certain weekly or a fortnightly cadence,
Right.
and talks about the product, the services, and how the physician could improve his digital outcomes. So in that sense, that's primarily been the core of what pharma marketing has been.
Hmm.
But to that, I think many layers have now got added, right? While that still has relevance today, I think a lot has changed in terms of having multiple touch points, digital coming up, even in the offline world, multiple other ways of engaging, so on and so forth. So a lot has evolved from there, but the core still remains, the healthcare professional. Yeah. So webinars, emails, SMSs, everything kind of crept into the marketing mix. And with time, the demand for novel approaches also grew even more. And obviously COVID accelerated, and digital became an opportunity area, and created avenues for more connected experiences for the healthcare professionals, and almost carved like an omni-channel model, making digital today almost an indispensable medium. Yeah. So with the transformation, yeah, it's been rapid, and with the advent of newer technologies, I think the role of the rep or the medical representative will continue to play a pivotal role, and digital will either complement or either it will augment all the efforts that he does in the offline world. And I think when both of these worlds come together, I believe is where we will be emerging with a really wonderful hybrid and a truly omni-channel experience. for the healthcare professional and also for the marketeer to ensure that he's able to make sense of all the touch points and start connecting the dots in a really true sense.
Yeah, that's truly interesting, Ms. Preetha, and what you are saying also has worked in multiple industry. The digital world is a complement to the physical world, and in our context, it is the reps or sales reps or marketing reps have been complemented by digital tools and technologies at their hands. And some of these, I remember a few brands which are online only are trying to shift to offline as well. So a human angle or human connect angle is really important and is more critical in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a general, what are the certain trends that you have observed, post COVID, or has COVID accelerated, as you mentioned? But some of few points if you want to highlight.
Sure, sure. So I think digital adoption in the pharma and life sciences industries existed even before pandemic. Very often it is misunderstood that it's only the pandemic that got us to start thinking digital. No, it did exist even before. The scale was different, the objective was different, the approach was different. Like for example, e-pharmacies, they gained popularity way before the pandemic. And pharma also experimented with smart factories powered by big data, machine learning, to improve cost effectiveness. Perhaps the application of digital in the marketing front was one that was taking a little while to come to its level of maturity. Okay, but some initiatives kind of had started even pre-COVID. Like I said, it was just the scale, the form, the objective, the approach, that was very different. So when I look at digital adoption, I always like to talk in terms of three eras. 3 years, it almost seems as if we've moved from one era to another. Yeah, so the first, of course, is the pre-pandemic era, where the sales force dominated the field with very little intervention of digital practices. Largely, it was in the form of e-detailers or sales rep triggered emails.
Hmm.
Then came the during pandemic. During pandemic was a very niche period. And as they say, necessity is the mother of all inventions. So in this phase, it kind of yes, of course, shook us, but also we realized that we didn't have another way to connect with the physician. During the point, doctors were not comfortable meeting, the COVID regulations were such, organizations had certain limitations of what, how that they couldn't send their field force, etc. So I think all of that got them to really really look at what role will digital play now in this context, and look at it in a really more bullish manner. Yeah, so earlier your digital became an a what do I say, a tick box activity or a checkbox activity, that I had to look at digital because it's an innovation. But here it almost became mandatory. It was like the survival of the fittest. So the pandemic forced us to operate very differently. So in-person meetings became virtual meetings. Your promotional material, was repurposed to say emails. Your offline CMEs took the avatar of webinars. Yeah, so on and so forth. So everything got realigned. And then came post pandemic era, where normalcy was setting in, COVID-19 restrictions eased up, and the pharma marketeers were sharp enough to integrate digital strategy into their marketing mix and arrive at a hybrid model. So it's not as if they went back to old practices, but I think they made use of this pandemic era to pick up things that worked for them, some things that they experimented, and to integrate that into their overall marketing mix. So I think that has helped in evolving what we call as the hybrid model, which is really bringing best of both worlds together. And they ensure that neither of the approaches are replaced, and industry continues to benefit from an integrated approach. So I think in that manner, if we start looking at it, your trends are primarily driven by the need and by the repurposing that the industry has done. So definitely digital is here to stay. Digital will become a strategic imperative that one will need to start looking at it. So even if you look at what's happening to markets like US, which is extremely evolved, yeah, digital is a way of life there. Yeah, programmatic advertising is one of the critical tools that they utilize to reach out to physicians. So in that context, I think it kind of really helps, to pick digital, make it a part of your marketing mix, and kind of move ahead.
Yeah, so a beautiful transition from traditional focused to only digital focused in the pandemic to now we are seeing mixed approach where as you rightly pointed out, it's a hybrid model. It's a amalgamation of physical plus digital. Um, yeah, that's I think uh, yeah, it makes sense, and as you rightly pointed out that now that level of digital integration is higher and would stay with us. And you
Absolutely.
mentioned programmatic marketing, and I know that Docare does it. It's mainly target using that approach. So could you expand a little bit on what Docare does and what is programmatic marketing for our audience?
Sure. So Docker primarily is a global network of HCP frequented platforms, yeah, for programmatic marketing. And programmatic marketing is nothing but, when machines are connected to each other, and they are talking to each other without any human intervention, and trying to identify who's behind the screen there, recognizing the person's interests, recognizing the person's, from where he's coming from a geo perspective, and then showcasing relevant messages. In fact, in the consumer world, I think we see programmatic advertising every day in and day out. We don't even realize. So if you are on a Facebook or you're on a Google, and you're there surfing around, you may see certain ads that are continuously chasing you. Yeah, so for example, if you are a fitness enthusiast, you will often wonder, why am I seeing a lot of energy drinks, or why am I seeing athleisure clothes being targeted to me, uh, and that's typically because the machine has learned that you are a fitness enthusiast, and perhaps these are your interest areas. So that's the power of data, that it is able to decode you to a certain extent, understand your interest, and then push out relevant messages in front of you, relevant ads in front of you, that the likelihood of you therefore looking at it or taking an action is way higher. And that's exactly what programmatic intends to do, and what we do at Docare, where we understand a HCP's specialism, we understand his location, we understand his interests, and basis that we are able to target to them and showcase branded messages, through our partner network. So we operate like an aggregate model, where we have looked at platforms from different segments and created an ecosystem. So whether it is doctor networking platforms, it is telehealth, EHR, online learning portals, online journals, we've been able to partner with a couple of players across this, and then create an ecosystem, so that when a marketer intends to target a particular physician segment, he needn't take the trouble of reaching out to independent platforms, but through the Docker network. In one go, you are able to get a fairly big audience whom you could reach out to. And also the fact that there's a live dashboard connected to it, you get to see the campaigns on a day to day basis, you could monitor it, optimize it real time, are some of the benefits that we are able to bring in. But I think most importantly, it's a platform that can help you scale, uh, and you could run campaigns yourself, once you kind of are comfortable with it. So that's in a sense what the platform is. And we are powered by a patented technology called as SPN, which helps us identify a physician uniquely. So, in a nutshell, we are a real time, transparent aggregator of physician marketing efforts.
Really interesting. And I was also reading about your latest white paper from Docker, and I recently came across a white paper from Docker I2P, which is intent to pay, and this was regarding some measuring ROI of marketing campaigns. It truly intrigued me. Can you expand on that a bit more?
Sure, sure. So, the genesis of I2P actually stems from one of the critical challenges the industry is facing today. Yeah, and the million-dollar question is, how do I measure the ROI of digital campaigns in the pharma world? And we often hear, conversations such as it's a black box. We don't know where the money is going. What's the impact? I don't know what the throughput of my campaign is. And that kind of really bogged us, to say that all these questions are very real, very valid, and it needs an answer, right? And the problem is, really that in markets like India, yeah, or I would say OUS, outside US, we lack a lot of data. There's data deficiency. And if you look at what US does, yeah, they primarily are able to attribute your campaign outcomes to prescriptions. And that's a very easy task because data is available. So, right at the start of the campaign, one can predict that if you pump in $100, what would be your throughput? Yeah, which is something we are not able to do due to the data deficiency that I spoke about earlier, which is where we started thinking that what is it that we could do and try and create, co-create with the industry today that is, pressed with this question of how do you measure your digital campaigns. So we took the lead, and collaborated with Medicine Man to work out a structured framework that would consider digital efficacy markers and create a formula that would help arrive at an I2P score. So when you do a digital campaign, there are so many markers that you are today given. Sometimes it's an overload, right? From impressions to clicks to your CTRs to the view time, etc. There's a lot there, but often that data can become a little overwhelming. And if you don't have a structure and a framework of viewing it through a certain lens, it could be quite misleading, or it could be a daunting task to start deciphering as well. Which is where we thought that an I2P, or an intent to prescribe score, would enable simplifying it. So it's basically an intent, right? It's a step before a physician is actually going to prescribe.
Hmm.
And therefore it's a very simple, straightforward tool that will help you, brands and marketeers, to arrive at a quantifiable performance score for their campaigns, taking in very basic data informations that are a part of any digital campaign. And a formula has been worked out. So we kind of involved industry experts, data scientists, media experts, and all of them together, came together and created an I2P formula. So that's available today as a calculator on the D2 website. I could perhaps drop the URL shortly with you as well. But in a sense, it's a way to bring in data-led accuracy, or data-led way to understand your digital outcomes, and help marketers assess uh, a intent to prescribe score.
I think outside in US we have prescription data, and there are a lot of data providers, aggregators, so to say. But outside of US, especially in certain Asian markets, we do not have a lot of data, right? And it is a Herculean task to like collect and gather that data at the same time and space. But this would certainly change that landscape and instill confidence in some of the pharma companies to do more digital campaigns, and really change the way they look at campaigns in general. So how do you move? How do you see that the industry moving going forward? We discussed that it is now a hybrid model. So how do you see the future of pharma marketing? and also, how will Docare move with it?
Sure. Uh, So of course, I mean, I think pharma is gonna do extremely well, when it comes from a marketing perspective, because all the right things are today explored, all the right questions are being asked. And with such a mindset, I think northwards is the only way that one could kind of move ahead. So if I start looking at it and just break it down to simplify this point, is that uh, there will clearly need to be, or rather there is a prioritization of an integrated omni-channel engagement, that will creep in. Yeah, so today when you look at the way the marketing is done, there are a lot of disconnected data sets that you see. Yeah, so they say, right, if you have a series of good quality but yet disconnected experiences, it creates more confusion
Hmm.
than clarity among customers, right? So from a marketeer's perspective, it really doesn't help connect the dots, and therefore losing out the opportunity to create a cohesive experience, right? So one should look at bringing all the disconnected data sets together, tools and platforms, to create personalized connected experiences between brands and physicians. And I think that's what a true omni-channel engagement model will turn to be. Yeah, so how do we put all of these pieces together, disconnected data sets all reside together, one platform, and then you start looking at creating cohesive journeys through it. So if they feed into each other and there's data flow happening in two ways, so I think that's when you will have a really beautiful engagement model that would be very, very powerful for a marketeer. So that's I think one of the trends that I foresee, or looking at pharma taking it up in a big way. Second is, we've always spoken about customer centricity, whether it is from a patient perspective, whether it is from a physician perspective. I think that will always be a very important and a critical centerpiece, because if you don't put the customer right at the center and then plan things around it, it's only going to be a one way conversation and not a two-way one. So therefore patient centricity is going to be, it is powerful today and it will become even more powerful tomorrow. Yeah, so in a world where we have the consumers who are increasingly becoming more empowered, the life sciences companies challenge the status quo and embrace opportunities to adopt a wide range of patient centered approaches, yeah, presented by an emerging ecosystem. So if you look at the way wearable devices, health devices, have started taking on a role that is getting integrated to what a doctor starts monitoring with the patient, so the richness that is flowing in from a lot of these allied spaces also makes it very important, to ensure that we are able to improve treatment outcomes, we are able to improve compliance, etc. So I think wearable fitness technologies will play a really big role, and that getting integrated into our pharma ecosystem will also start changing a lot of dynamics. And I think the third point is, you know, the point of care platforms will start taking center stage. So with India's efforts to bring in digitization initiatives, such as the Ayushman Bharat digital mission, yeah, it primarily aims to, develop the backbone necessary to support integrated digital health infrastructure of the of the country. And if we bridge the existing gap amongst the different stakeholders of healthcare ecosystem through digital highways, so that's what the entire ABDM model is about. Yeah, so it's got multiple components, right? Like you have an Aadhaar number, you have unified healthcare interface, etc. Now if all these are being implemented, yeah, it will open up many opportunities for pharmaceuticals to engage with patients, with physicians in a more meaningful manner, because your entire telehealth and EHR is going to become the centerpiece, will become the connector, and everything from a patient data will start flowing into this, and it's going to be so centrally managed, that I think if pharmaceuticals will also find ways and means to integrate into that ecosystem, and really will make it uh, you know exciting for the doctor, for the patient, for the marketer, because you will start having more meaningful connections and more meaningful outcomes through this model.
So we talked about how future of pharma marketing would be, um, but at the same point in time, how do you envision the future of Docker?
Yeah. So, well, this year the focus is all about consolidating. Yeah. So we are now present across US, UK, Europe, APAC, and GCC. And the idea is to have more deeper connections, with brands and organizations in these markets. So, that's from a global footprint perspective. So to us, this year is crucial from that perspective. And we've kind of also started looking at how do we line up our product roadmap to address some of the newer developments that is happening in the industry, the needs that are currently there, and how do we ensure that we are able to service that. So we understand the power of data and identity solution, right? And we're quite excited to be working on our own CDP, which is essentially your customer data platform, and start looking at unified physician graphs across markets, across channels. That will really help us to identify and target physicians even more precisely, and plus create a holistic profile of each HCP basis their unique behavior, interests, cohorts, etc. And start creating online cohorts, and then enable marketers to target them. So I think that's the level of precision that we intend to work towards, and through CDP we believe we should be able to do that. Apart from that, we're also looking at working on the new omni-channel offering, which when married with your validated identity data, will enable us to target HCPs across any device, any channel that they may prefer. And not just our own data or products. Yeah, we're also looking at creating an open ecosystem, where we are also working on making our offering as open as possible by introducing the ability to connect with any data partner, measurement partner or network. So you bring, if you running a campaign on a Docker network, you either run with the physician segment that you have on our platform, utilize the performance tools on our platform, or you bring in third parties, that you are wanting to integrate with, onto the platform, start connecting different pipelines to each of those third parties and then run. So truly you are looking at a more platform approached base, which will really help you understand and consolidate all your digital initiatives, its outcomes, and then start taking more informed decisions, so that you're able to maximize your outcomes. So it's, we call it almost like build your own DSP model. Yeah, it's a BYOD model, wherein you decide what works for you best. So either you do with what we currently have, or you bring in all the other connectors, that you intend to integrate into your plan and run it through one single platform. So I think that's where we intend to reach, and we've already started towards that journey, and I'm sure this year we would be able to achieve that, hopefully by the end of the year.
I'm sure, and I think what you mentioned would be a wonderful platform, because they might have existing partners where they have some data, or run some they have products, but integrating them into a single platform would truly work out wonders. Um, Thanks, Miss Preetha. Thank you for taking time out for this podcast. It was lovely to have you, and knowing more about the pharma marketing space with you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much once again for having me here.